Welcome back, everybody, to In the Loop. What's up, everybody? My name is Michael Burpo, and welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking about leading the pack. So this is all about business leadership and development and how to manage kind of a large group. And I'm joined by two CEOs, which is a very special honor. Ben Smithy from the Smithy Group, as well as Ross Cockrum from Punchmark. He's my boss. And I'm very pleased to get a chance to talk with them and talk about growth, as well as how they manage and kind of push their employees and how they transition to a digital age and working remote as we switched in 2020 to fully remote, both of us. It's a really good talk. I think that it's a little bit away from what we normally talk about, and I think it really shines. So please enjoy. And this episode is brought to you by Punchmark, the jewelry industry's leading website provider. Join the community of nearly 500 other jewelry stores in choosing Punchmark's easy-to-run and e-commerce-enabled website platform by visiting punchmark.com for your free trial demo. And this episode is brought to you by the Smithy Group, a digital growth agency that helps leaders and businesses dream bigger and achieve multi-generational integrity. Through insights and intelligence, digital marketing, and advertising solutions, they help businesses expand their business and grow their revenue. The Smithy Group has helped hundreds of businesses surpass their goals and believe that whatever your business, whatever your story, they make it matter to your audience. A very special thank you to Podium for sponsoring the show and making it all happen, and you'll hear more about them later on the show. Please enjoy. All right, everybody, we're back. I've got Ben Smithy from the Smithy Group with me. I've got Ross Cockrum from Punchmark. My name is Michael Burpo. So we're going to be talking about leading the pack. Leading the pack is going to be all about business leadership and kind of leading teams, I guess is a kind of a better way to look at it, as well as maybe we can talk about some people that are leaders for you guys. I'm always interested in that. I think the leadership is one of those things very underrated as a part of kind of like in a business approach. I feel like sometimes people look into the dollars and cents a little bit too much, and sometimes it's about like inspiring and, giving good directions. Am I off the mark? You guys have a little bit more experience than I do on this.
No, I think that's right. I don't know if it's undervalued or underestimated. I just think that it's the hardest thing to do.
Gotcha.
I mean, leading people, right? And that's what it is. I think it breaks down to you lead people and you manage processes. And if you can focus on those two things well, you're going to have a fairly successful business. So you at least have the opportunity to. But you have to focus on leading people and managing processes.
Totally agree. I think one of the hardest things for a doer like myself is, it's easier to lead by example, but then when you need to learn how to delegate, you're doing too many examples and suddenly you find yourself overwhelmed. So I think every business owner can sort of identify with that and finding, how to take a step back, create the processes and overall the principles that are going to run your business, and then live by those. And it's a little harder to actually achieve those. And I like, in a perfect world, I like leadership by nudging rather than by, commanding, right? So,
yeah.
And I think everyone can agree, who's been led can agree that that's a better, the what do you think we should do approach rather than do this approach. But it's hard. It's always hard to do, so.
Before we go too far, let's actually set the stage. You guys are both CEOs, Chief Executive Officers, in case you guys are living under many rocks. That is, you guys lead businesses that have been, very established, you might say. I think, Ross, how big is your team and how long has Punchmark been around for?
We've been around since 2008, so this is our 13th year in a few months in May, and the team is 15 strong as far as full-time employees that would all be here at the office. We utilize some freelancers and other network people, but that's the gist of it. So, yeah.
Ben, what about yourself?
Yeah, similar size organization and since 2015.
Gotcha. So another question is, so sometimes the C-suite can be kind of lofted a little bit higher and not be involved on as much of a day-to-day basis. And the main reason why I want to set this up is mainly to give a better perspective on, where you guys are coming from. How many individual employees do you feel that you have the direct kind of management of at this moment?
Me personally, 4. But 4 direct, but I am involved a little bit with others, just on an as-needed basis. How about you, Ben?
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing. So if I'm doing my job well, and I looked at this year, and even in journaling, like I took up the practice of journaling, and in journaling, and even focusing on if I'm doing my job well as a leader, as a CEO, then I'm really focused on essentially, the 3 or 4 other leaders in the organization and leading them, and then trusting them to disperse that information across the organization.
Yeah.
If I start trying to, now that's not, I'm responsible for everyone, right? Because I'm responsible for setting the tone for culture and all these other things. But on a day-to-day basis, the majority of my time needs to be invested in growing and developing and leading my leadership team. And if I'm not focused on that, then it's going to be an inefficient and ineffective organization.
Totally.
Yeah. Again, it's kind of like I love sports. And one of the things that I always really liked about sports was how you could break down the leadership into different styles across different teams. And one thing I really liked was in lacrosse, we had different positions. So in those positions, there was one assistant captain, and then there was one captain. And if you just extrapolate your thought a little bit, you could see how that could be sort of like a CEO or a president, and having directors underneath them, and then you have the head guy for the different lines and whatever. I thought it was very interesting how speaking to some of our clients, how they have sort of similar structures as well. You have, your CEOs, or you have your business owners, and then you have also your managers or your social managers. And if you want to get as granular, what was it like growing a business and then having to kind of let go of that? That's got to be very scary.
I don't know. For me, there's a difference between how I'm wired and how I'm actually working. And I've always been wired with a vision to scale and the knowledge of letting go of stuff so I could pick up the right things, right? And so in that space, I've never been hesitant to let go of something. I've not been like the control freak or things of that nature, or micromanaging has not been my approach to that. But understanding and building the organization to actually support that is different. And so I think as a leader, you have to be very, very self-aware on what your intentions are versus your actions. And so really building an organization, I would be completely honest in saying it's only been more recently in the past couple years where we've built the organization in a way that I can really focus more and most to this point on what I need to be focusing on, and in that sort of passed down leadership model as I'm talking about here. And I don't think we've perfected it. I don't think I've perfected it at this moment. I still think there's times where I'm involved in something where I potentially couldn't be, or et cetera, but the mindset is there. So I wouldn't say it was hard to let go of something. And that's purely because I feel like I have a really great team, and I'm blessed with a great team. And I think that I'm sure Ross will say the same thing, that I think in that space, it's really important. Now, I will say one caveat. I'm not in a very technical space to where it often is harder to let go of something. So if I was a graphic designer that created a graphic design studio and I was the lead designer and now I'm letting that go, if I was the lead developer and now I'm letting that go, that's a much harder thing oftentimes for a founder to let go of on a very technical and a very tactical type thing, if that's what the business is based on. For me, it's about knowledge, right? We're a service and knowledge business. And so if I hired smart people that I trusted that own the culture, it was easy for me to let that go because I'm super entrepreneurial ADD and want to focus on the next thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I personally suffer from that, Ben. I starting off with just myself and Daniel, my business partner who I co-founded the business with, we built everything ourselves. We were like, do we go with something like WordPress or, something open source, or build it ourselves? And we took the crazy challenge of doing that, and having that, ownership of the platform as a proprietary level is such a big, it's something I'm proud of, but also like when you relinquish that, you're like, please take care of my baby. You know what I mean? Like, please don't mess this part up. But also you didn't look in chapter 950, page 70,000, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many intricate pieces of it that it took a while for me to trust that, to be honest. And it wasn't that I didn't trust the people.
Yeah, it's got to be harder.
It was that I didn't trust myself to document so much of it because I'm like, there's a few million lines of code that you have to look through. And how long is it really going to take someone to understand that? And, it's one person, it was actually the realtor who got us our first office in Charlotte, brought up an analogy of, I'm not going to get this right, but it's someone like from high up, AT&T, who every time he hired someone in a director or an executive position, he gave them a set of the Russian dolls that when you open them up, there's another doll inside of it and they're, keeps going.
Oh, cool.
And the reason why he sent this gift is to remind them that if you hire someone beneath you who reports to you, and you hire someone who is less adequate than you as far as skill set, then you're going to end up with this only going down, down, down. But if where your entire business is made up of people who are less, have less of a aptitude as far as getting something done, and then the opposite can take effect, where you look for all stars in your company and you hire the best people who are way beyond you. And as a CEO, I'd love to do that and find people out there who have years of experience that I would never even understand. And then the level of trust just goes way, way up in that regard.
That's good.
And I think that one of the things that has been a growing pain for Punchmark was we were transitioning into this scalability model. And maybe this is applicable to some of our businesses who went from being a legacy model of a jewelry store that was owned in, I don't want to say the dark ages, but in the pre-tech era. And then now they are moving into this very tech-heavy area, which we just have spent last episode talking about. I think that one of the most important things I'm trying to push onto the company is this documentation. And so we started this thing, I'll give it away. We use a thing called Confluence. And Confluence, it's an Atlassian product. It's the same company that produces Jira as well as Trello and I don't know, a million other things. But what it basically is they make user manuals, essentially, tech user manuals. And we use one to make this knowledge base for our clients. And it's all about our product, how to use this interface. But we also have a second one that's all about Punchmark internal processes. And what's very interesting is I was worried that what happens if Brian, our CTO, what happened if he I don't know, man, something not good happened to him? What if he just...
You had a terminal event.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, wow, great term. No, what if he, got stuck in the woods for a night and at the same time we got DDoSed? I don't know, man. I'm from the north. That's a good example, trust me. But they get stuck in the woods and we get DDoSed or something and our servers are going crazy and they're getting hit. What if he's the only one who knew how to restart it? And I was like, we can't have that happen. And I wonder if that's kind of like a similar process that a lot of our clients are going through is they're having to document or they're trying to, you can't have one person know how to do an important event because what happens if that important event comes up and that person is out of commission or they are just not in the office or they're in a flight? That's a good example. That's one thing I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a great point, Mike. And it's the same reason why company owners, used to take different flights to
I heard that.
Certain events, in case the flight goes down like that, and that's a pretty classic thing that people do. And just
still do.
Yeah, still do. And by the way, for those who listening, a DDoS attack is a distributed denial of service, DDoS, which means bots usually hit your server so hard and so fast that you don't have time to respond, and therefore the server ends up going down. So, but yeah, I mean, Mike I'll commend you for it because it's such a good aspect of our business now and scalability. Mike's been a stickler for, hey, Ross, guys, we need to get this documented. The stuff you're doing now, Ross, I know it's taken you 3 days to do it, so take your time. I'm not trying to rush you, but can you outline it when you do it?
Screenshot
everything you do, just outline it this time. Taking a couple extra seconds. It's just that constant reminder, and I've been doing it for the last couple years, slowly documenting things, and I would use Google Docs. But now that we have a centralization, it's key. So kudos to Mike for really being a stickler in that. And
thank you.
and in our promoting of two positions to director level, I've noticed a big change in the trust aspect, not just of me, of trusting our employees and people to actually carry out and execute certain things, but the rest of the team, knowing who to look to. I love the fact that I just had my wife. I didn't have one, but my wife just had a baby on the 27th of December. So I've been out of commission for a while. I've been home, with the family and such, and I felt better than I've ever felt being able to let the company run itself, like honestly. And I owe a lot of that to the directorship from Mike and Jason and, from my business partners, Brian and Dan, and the rest of the company just handling it. You know what I mean? Like I've never felt in a better position for that. So I think 2020 is another reason for helping us get there and establishing those systems in place. But the documentation is key.
Got to write it all down.
Yeah, it's interesting. The difference between you talk about, scalability and you think about hard to scale, you look at services, right? And the difference between a product and a service company where like, for example, y'all are kind of a hybrid, but it's essentially, let's say a product, right? You're developing a product company. And then as an agency, we're 100% a service company. Now we have productized services and you have service add-ons to your products, but at the core, you're a product company and we're a service company. Capacity to scale a lot of times for a product company is based on the ability for redundancy. And I would say product companies to scale have a redundant issue. Service companies to scale have an abundancy issue. Like how much abundancy of knowledge can you have and skills and hours to be able to scale that services business? For a product company, it's how redundant can you make the things to where you can move on to the next thing, right? The redundant knowledge, the redundant servers, redundant all of these different things to be able to give you the capacity to grow. For a services company, we're looking at, wait, do we have the abundance of knowledge? Do we have the abundance of hours, of manpower, of all these things to be able to do what we need to do to scale? And it's a really interesting concept because you hit a founder's ceiling if you're not letting go of things, if you're not bringing on the right people, if you're not doing the things that you need to do to equip. And from a services standpoint, we're always looking at like, how do we get to the point where we're hiring before we need to? Right? Which is a big loss on a P&L for a services company because you don't want an abundance of people like in a consulting firm, in a management consulting firm, it's called on the bench, right? You don't want your consultants on the bench.
Yeah.
You want them all fully active, fully in the field on a project, boom, 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 right? The last thing McKinsey or Bain or Booz Allen or KPMG wants to have is a consultant on the bench, right? They want them deployed in the field.
Utilized.
And that's what we want on it now. We don't have that problem, right? Where my team is always like, wait a minute, we need more people. How do we grow? Which is great. And I think that's a good thing. But the problem we always have is how do we find people with an abundant knowledge, that skill set, that growth. I love the sort of Russian stacking dolls concept that you brought up because that's a huge thing. Like if we're not hiring people that push us and that lead and that are natural born leaders, regardless of their title at the office, then both of our companies are at the stage where every person impacts culture,
right?
In a major way, in an order of magnitude, right? And so if we're not careful on how we make that hire, they're either positively or negatively impacting the company culture at this point in our size of companies. And it's either a plus or a minus. There's very few zeros.
Yeah,
sure.
Guys, we're going to take a quick break. Maybe we can have a word from Podium about what they offer. We'll be back in just 30 seconds. Our clients know that it doesn't matter how great your website is if people can't find it. Podium helps you get found and chosen by making it easy to get reviews from your happiest customers, just by sending a simple review request through text. In fact, with Podium, every step of your customer journey is powered by text messaging, so you can talk to your customers on the channels they prefer. Start the conversation on your website with Podium Web Chat. Set appointments, answer questions, and close deals all in the same thread. When it's time to pay, just send a request over text so your customers can pay in seconds. And now that you've got a happy customer, send them a review invite over text too, so you can rise up the local rankings and start the cycle all over again. With all of this, plus powerful integrations and features in one consolidated inbox, Podium is your tool for customer communication. Send a text, get more done. Punchmark clients will receive 25% off when they sign up for Podium. Learn more at podium.com/punchmark. Thanks, back to the show. So we're still talking about company management as well as more like just team dynamics, I think. And Ben, you were just talking about how there's an impact on company culture as you hire more people, especially when you're in the kind of under, I don't even know. I've never been in a company that's over 20 people. So in the under 20 people size, how do you go about picking and hiring people who are going to push you, like you just mentioned, as well as being a good culture fit? Because there's been a lot of talk on the interwebs that culture fit is a myth and that you shouldn't be hiring for that, and you should instead hire for their skills. I fall somewhere in between there. What about yourself?
We have a 2-phase process. So generally, if you interview for our company, you're going through 3 or potentially 4 interviews.
Yeah.
And the first is sort of a generic orientation interview where they're pretty much interviewing us, and we're making sure that to dot the I's and cross the T's for resume, experience, all that. The second interview, and Alex, our VP of operations, normally manages that. The second interview is generally with Alex and then a team lead, whomever they would be reporting up to. And then by the time that they are competent on their competencies, meaning that we feel comfortable with their competencies, that they can do the job, yada, 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 then I'll come in generally for an interview. And I'm really focused on culture and company fit. I'm of the school that I do believe that culture is everything. It's the only thing that makes us unique to another company. It's the only thing that makes us, we're a services company. So they have to have a certain mindset, a certain culture, a certain thing to enhance the culture. Now, what I think the mistake in the sort of misnomer around culture is people think that we're hiring, replica identicals of people. And that's not the case at all. I would say that's not the case. We want people that are going to enhance culture by expanding it, right? Not by just being a robot of me or Alex or Cody or whomever. It's how do we get someone that's going to expand our culture, someone that's going to diversify our culture, someone that's going to impact our culture in a positive way, not just be a one-off. So I don't want someone that thinks just like I do, especially if they're in a media strategist role. I want them thinking totally different than me in a lot of ways. I want them very focused. I want them very analytical. I want them,
Yeah.
So
That's how you get that blend, for sure. No, I totally agree.
Exactly. So I think culture is important, and we just bake it into our hiring process. We bake it into our onboarding process. We bake it into the verbiage that we use in our meetings, everything. Every conversation that I have as a leader with anyone in the company is an ability to impact culture. And that's how serious I think we take it.
Yeah. What about yourself, Ross? I think that you, I remember when there was just, I think at one point there was just 8 of us in one room. And now that there's 15, one thing that I'm still very proud of is, I still really like you guys. And I think that that's kind of like, not a lot of companies have that. I actually like you guys. And is that something you're kind of trying to hire for, Ross? Are you trying to find drinking buddies? Or is it like, how do you go through that?
Exactly. No, I think we also have a 3 to 4 part interview process. And, I personally, sometimes it's the opposite. Usually you interview someone at HR or some other person before that you go up the ladder. Then you might talk to the CEO or someone head up. But I like to take that first initiative myself because I look for passion. I look for that eagerness. I look for the glimmer in the eye, if you will, because that's very important. You can't teach that. You can't teach, accountability and ownership. You can to a certain degree, but it's really hard. They either have it or they don't. And so I look for that. I look for how that comes out in their language. Look for that and how that comes out in their experience and resume and what they've done and how they've helped a company. And then next it goes on to another follow-up interview with potentially the owners, depending on the position. But Mike, as you know, I also conduct, not myself, but I have the team conduct peer interviews. And those peer interviews are all around the culture side of it. And I ask 3 questions of each person. So Mike, you're on a panel of 4 people who do this. And, I think my questions are, number 1, how will this candidate's skill set affect the company in a positive way? Rate that 1 to 5. Number 2, what's the likelihood that this candidate will be here in the long run? Like will stick around for a while, 1 to 5.
That's good.
And then number 3, what will their personality mesh well with the team, right? Socially, right? 1 to 5. And that's the culture side of it. But what we do is in those interviews, I don't share any resumes. I don't share any information. So as if the 4 people on the panel, right, were to just meet this person in a park or in a bar or wherever, right? Oh, hey, how you doing, Chris? Nice to meet you. What do you do? And then if they say, oh, I'm this, but I also play the guitar. It's like it's a surprise rather than like, oh yeah, well, we read that on your resume. We have that against you. We know everything about you and you know nothing about us, right?
For that example, it's like, oh, you play the guitar, and then it's like, that's so cool. What made you pick up the guitar? And that's kind of what the we call ourselves the hiring squad, which I think is a very clever name.
I like it.
And
it's our Slack channel, the hiring squad.
Yes, exactly. What's very interesting though is the questions and the information that is ascertained is very, very doesn't matter. That doesn't matter that they play the guitar. Is that going to come in handy one day? Probably not. But it's all about, can you show that you're passionate about things? Can you give and take in a conversation? Are you able to, at one point we usually ask, our throwaway question is, do you wear jewelry? And again, does that question mean anything? It really, really does not. And they could say yes, they could say no, but then we say the follow-up question is where all the money is. It's like, oh, why not? And when they give that a little bit more, I feel like that's when you can kind of see who they are. And since we started doing this hiring squad, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that we have done a very good job with our hires. We keep on bringing on people. I think last year we netted 4 hires over the course of last year, and that is a big deal.
4.
Yeah, and that's like...
Hired 5, netted 4, 80% success rate.
Yeah, but I mean, but when you think about bringing on 4, that means that we were at 11 people before, and now we grew our company by almost 50%. And bringing some people on, you can very quickly wander from the mean if you're not careful in any group.
That's why culture is so important, is because it's got a significant impact. And if you're under 50 people, every person, there's no margin, right? If there's this sort of 80-20 rule, right, where there's and it's some sort of like a 10-80-10 sometimes that I heard of. Like you have your 10% that are your rock stars and your all stars, right? You have your 80%, and then you have 10% that if they don't rise to the occasion, they're going to pull some of that 80% down. Well, when you look at a team of 20, that's a significant impact versus if you look at a team of 50 versus a team of 1,000, right? When it comes at now, it's all percentages, so it's all in ratio. It's no difference. But when you look at when everybody's able to fit into one office, when everybody's able to fit on one Zoom screen, right? All these different things have an order of magnitude to impact and felt impact than when you have 50. Even I think 50 is a magic number when it comes to some of that stuff too. Not that it's less important or you take your foot off the gas, but the felt impact of one person in one office is way different, right? In 50, when you get up into groups of even groups into 25 or more, you start getting subgroups and you start getting sub-communities and subcultures. Yeah. But when you're as small as we are in this sense, I still consider us a very small business, Right. And the person that's the lonely entrepreneur out there, they're like, oh, dang, that's big. To Ogilvy, they're like, oh, that's tiny, But when it comes to what we're doing, I consider us a small business. So I care because I can at this point, And it comes down to that. Like I can care about it that much.
Yeah.
Right. Well, what's funny is, in my past life, I worked as a recording engineer. And, while I was going to school, I interned at studios where I wasn't even really getting paid yet. But what was ironic is I was working alongside interns who were actually paying to be there. So this was my battle. How am I going to try to justify literally getting paid an hourly rate when I'm competing with that? And you look at the culture of a recording studio in a place where everyone wants to be. You want to be recording with cool musicians and famous people, right? And funny story for the person who the guy who's editing this very podcast, Paul.
Hi, Paul.
I used to work with him, Soundtrack New York, Manhattan, and in those kinds of aspects, the benefits are you have a benefit of culture. You have a benefit. You say, oh, you have 401k, you have this and that. By the way, we did not have 401k at those kinds of levels. But when the benefit is that the culture is so cool to be there, that's so important because you can look at all the money in the world. You could look at, all the PTO days or whatever other perks you might get, travel. But if you like being there, if you like the people that you're working next to, that I think outweighs every single thing. So we put a very important emphasis on culture and on people, and we want to make sure that they fit in with who we already have here,
Well, and I'd say that's honestly for partnerships too, what we look in. It goes out to who we partner with. And I'm a little biased, like we have a freaking podcast together. We started Couch Conference together, things like that. But there's a reason why we hang out at conferences together. We do all these other things, like because the cultures match, the vibes match, like from day one.
Totally.
I mean, when you and me and Brian and Dan and everyone we met, like there's a, I hate to use the word because it's got a bad stigma to it now, but it's like that whole sort of like synergy of it, that there is a great culture fit between what we do. And so we're always future focused. We're not at the cost of, well, is this going to cost TSG more or Punchmark more? Is this going to be this or this? It's like when you get the friends at the table that you're fully comfortable just picking up the check because someone else can pick it up the next time or the next time. And that, you know what I mean? It's just like, it comes down to something like that of, is the mindset the same? Do our actions meet that culture and that mindset? And it matters. I just think the other thing that it goes without saying, as an entrepreneurial leader out there, you should have the luxury of doing business and creating a company with the people that you want to spend time with. And that's why someone else likely is joining a smaller company versus a bigger company.
100%.
It's because they want to enjoy that culture or a different culture. So if you're not creating that, then what's the benefit of being or starting your own company?
When we're not in COVID, we're spending 40 to 50 to 60 hours in the same office, ours is one room, a main room. And man, if you don't like someone, I can tell you it makes the hours, you feel the hours. And when you like the people, it goes a little bit easier. And I think, Ben, you touched on that 50 mark. I think that Roman troops, the max size was 50 because that was like the max size that people were able to easily disseminate orders and manage and move cohesively. And then once you get over that, then you need to split it into, I think that was the number of a battalion. But it was just like, once you get over a certain hump, I don't know if Punchmark will, get into the 200 range of employees. But right now, I think that we're being very thoughtful about our growth. And I think that's, the way I want it to be. Guys, I think maybe we'll kind of wrap it up right there. Very special thank you to Ben Smithy, Ross Cochran, two CEOs. What are the chances of having two CEOs on here? That's pretty baller. And very special thank you to Podium for making this all happen and for sponsoring our podcast. Definitely go check them out. And for you guys for listening, my name is Michael Burpo. We'll see you guys next week. Take it easy. Bye.